Hey, what's up, tribe? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the TFC Audio Project Down Under. In this episode, I chat with Andy Bryant, who is a podiatrist and a TFC foot nerd based in Melbourne. Andy is also the leader of the Natural Podiatry Society, which we discuss throughout the episode, along with some important concepts around feet and footwear, load management, and the use of social media to facilitate connection and change.
This week's episode is brought to you by TFC Balance Beams. They're our favourite simple tool for training balance in a fun and playful way, and each beam comes with our online beam training system to help you get started. We also wanted to say a huge thanks to everyone who's bought one so far. For every order from our store, we donate $5 to Reforest Now to plant a tree to restore rainforests here in Australia. And we're pretty proud to say that your support so far has helped us plant more than 650 trees and counting. If you don't live in Oz but want one of our beams, we do ship internationally. Our 90cm beams are an affordable option as shipping works out quite a bit cheaper. We also offer wholesale prices for any practitioners, instructors or coaches who believe in the importance of balance training and want to get their clients involved. Send us a message on Instagram at tfc.australia or via email at info@tfc-shopaus.com.
All right, so Andy, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this conversation has been a long time coming, and I'm excited to dig into just your story and some of the exciting upcoming projects we've got in the works. But you've been a TFC guy since day dot, pretty much, or at least in Australia. You were actually my first beam customer ever. Did you know that?
Yeah, I think I'd forgotten, but I remember you telling me that in the past.
Yeah, so a few years ago when we started putting the beams online, I did the launch and then suddenly got this big $700 order of 2 beams, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Some podiatrist in Melbourne.
Yeah, from a podiatrist.
But yeah, I was like, geez, that's exhilarating.
Is that the only podiatrist sale so far?
I think so, yeah. No, we've had a few others, but maybe not quite so significant. But I really appreciate that. And I guess what I appreciate even more is that it's led to quite a special friendship, and to have someone down here like you who has such expertise around feet, but also sees things a lot more holistically, and having a leader in our community to do with that, I think I'm really, really grateful for. So,
thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you.
I'm grateful for your leadership, James.
Well, it's what I love is just the collective aspect of it. We're all on the same page. We're all on the same level, and we all just work together.
Yeah.
And coming from different expertises and everything, but all working towards that main goal of just making health a bit more simple.
Yeah.
Starting at the feet. So I thought we could just start this podcast by you just telling us a bit about yourself, what you do, why you do it from a personal or professional or both point of view. Just launch in with that.
So I'm a father of 2 kids and a few animals as well, and I'm a podiatrist, and I think you called me a mover. Like, I think that's how I would label my exercise now. I just like to move in any and varied ways without too much routine, just whatever takes my fancy. You probably want to hear more about the podiatry side of things. Well,
yeah, might as well.
I've been a podiatrist for 20 years, just very traditional for the first 15 before I started exploring stuff myself. And now I would call myself a natural podiatrist proudly.
Yeah. And we're definitely going to dig into the natural podiatry side of things. But what got you into podiatry in the first place? Like, what was the interest?
I was doing work experience, I think, with a physio. There was a podiatrist there as well, and she was doing ingrown toenail surgery, and I quite liked the gore and the.
Did you?
Yeah, I really enjoyed watching it.
Yeah.
And I actually got one of my first jobs with that podiatrist as well, like 4 or 5 years later, whatever it was.
Right.
So it sort of went from there. I thought I liked the sporting aspect of it as well, but I never really got into the sports side of podiatry so much. And I didn't actually enjoy studying it, and I thought I might just like to educate or become a lecturer. Mm-hmm. So I did an extra year at uni, sort of playing around with that, but we were allowed to work at the time as well, and money and a career beckoned. So I left that side of things, but I feel like I've come full circle and feel far more of an educator now than I could have ever been.
Yeah.
And that's where I want to move towards more education, even whether it's one-on-one with my clients or to the broader spectrum of the public or podiatrists.
Well, that's the real key, isn't it? Education when it comes to health. I mean, obviously there has to be some level of action, but you need the right level of awareness and understanding about the body and what it needs on a biological and physiological level in order to actually take the actions that need to be taken. Hey.
Yeah, and I'd say it's my primary form of treatment now, to educate people.
Yeah, absolutely. And how did you find the podiatry course? Like, how did you find going through uni and then going out into the workforce? And tell us a bit about that.
Well, I think it probably equipped me well to be a normal podiatrist. As with any health profession, you probably learn a lot more in that first year out than you do while you're there. Yeah. But in retrospect, it didn't equip me for what I want to do now. Although I think I have a voice within podiatry, and even more so within other health professional realms and within the public, because I'm a podiatrist. So if I'm saying something about feet, people are like, oh, he's a podiatrist, he must know what he's talking about, even though I'm saying something very different to most other podiatrists. So I'm grateful for the education because it gives me a voice. Because if a personal trainer or a exercise physiologist says what I'm saying, they're like, oh yeah, that's what I expect to hear from them, but they don't expect it to hear from a podiatrist. And so I definitely have a voice because of that background, because people still see podiatrists as at the forefront of foot health.
Yeah, which is really important, and part of why I'm so grateful you're a part of our community and a leader in our community, because I mean, I think I've found the same thing with my physiotherapy degree. Like, they taught us a whole heap about how to diagnose and manage certain conditions, and a lot of it was manual therapy, and they did obviously touch on education and load management and things like that, but we only had one subject for not even a semester. I guess it was more of a term. Oh no, it must have been a semester on exercise prescription. But looking back at it, it really wasn't a very movement focused, curriculum. Yeah. And I think what I most benefited from that degree was a very, very deep understanding of the human body and appreciation for the human body and how it works. And, knowing your anatomy and physiology really matters when it comes to working with people. Maybe not as much as is stressed, because like we said, a lot of it comes down to education, but, it is important to know about the body on a deep level. And then also having the physiotherapy degree, it does help when I'm running workshops or putting education out there that people go, oh, okay, he has a physio degree, he knows what he's talking about to some degree. Yeah. Even though a lot of physios maybe don't know as much, depending on what other ongoing education they've done for themselves as well. Most physios, it's not a given that all physios are going to research all these different aspects of health as well. They might just sort of stick with the specific physio knowledge and delve a lot into the physio research and go down that, more of that path. But I think having had that experience at uni had opened me up to understanding all those other aspects of health from a physiological point of view, and then being able to integrate that into my own life and then be able to talk about that with clients has been really powerful. Yeah. But it is good to not just be some hippie who likes being barefoot, when someone does give you a voice, like you said. Yeah.
And I think we're cashing in on that to some extent, because if we're trying to reach out to people that don't understand what we're on about in terms of natural movement and a natural way of living, because if someone already understands that, then they don't care whether they're a physio or a podiatrist. Yes. But the people that don't understand it, they're the people we're trying to reach to spread spread health in this realm in a bigger space. They do really value whether you're a podiatrist or a physio, and so it is important. So I think I easily forget that. And so I have to be grateful for that, for that piece of paper. I still think that piece of paper is important for that, because then I can reach people that aren't open to it in the first place.
Exactly.
And the second point that I thought of when you were speaking then is that that background knowledge that I think almost take for granted once you know it initially. and you think you know it all, sort of when you finish uni. But then when you live it, like I've worked for 20 years, just speaking about how the foot functions, watching people move for 20 years, and that gives you this library or this background knowledge of foot function that I take for granted, I think, at times. And so I shouldn't. And I see it through a lens of having had that education. So I think when I first started down this realm of natural podiatry, I was probably like, uni taught me nothing, but now I can see that it was still a good grounding in having, a different lens to look through at natural foot function.
For sure.
Yeah.
And you do need to lay down that foundation. And I think what you were touching on before is, having this voice as a health professional that people do trust because of the institutions, the university institutions, then it is proof that you've studied basically, and you've studied the human body, and at the same time, say if I said to someone as a physio, I said to someone, oh, you may not need your orthotics if you strengthen and mobilize your foot. So, simple thing like that. But they've heard something completely different from their podiatrist.
Yes.
They're like, well, my podiatrist is the foot guy.
Yeah.
And he says this. You're a physio, I'm not, physios aren't the foot people.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with what my podiatrist says. But then if I can refer someone to you or another podiatrist in our community for a second opinion, and then you can explain from a podiatry point of view why that orthotic might not be needed or why it was prescribed in the first place, and really use the language that a podiatrist uses, then that person goes, oh, okay, now he's saying this, so this podiatrist is saying this, my other podiatrist is saying that. I can kind of see, I can see the bridge here or the gap here, and then it can start to make more sense. And so I think that's where the power of the Foot Collective really is because it is a collective of, it's not just podiatrists, it's not just physios, it's not just anything.
Anyone, yeah.
It's and it's not even just health professionals. It's teachers and even nurses and who are health professionals but don't necessarily work with rehab or musculoskeletal things. And so we do have this really broad range of people with different expertises that are starting to say more and more of the same thing. And obviously even not just the foot nerds, but then all these people on in our Instagram communities who are on the same wavelength, who maybe haven't done the foot nerd program, but then they're putting out or sharing information that is on the same wavelength. And bit by bit, if you're on Instagram and you see this podiatrist say, feet can be strong and mobile if you train them, you see the physio say that, you see your coach say that, you see, then it starts to build this picture of the foot and the body as a resilient, adaptable organism that, that can be really strong and heal itself when given the right inputs. So I think it's a really powerful thing.
I think what you just described as education being the key thing. Like if you just put that in a nutshell, it's about educating people that there is a different way, and if people are wanting to be educated, they want to hear it from someone that they value their opinion.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And people being ready to be educated is another thing. There's obviously a lot of, there's a lot of work to do in terms of getting the message out to the general public at large. I find in Instagram or just in general, you start to hang out with people who are more on your wavelength, and you start to, and even like you said with your university degree and your years of experience, you start to think about things as common knowledge, and you think about certain things like, that everyone knows that. Yeah. Or everyone knows that feet should be, you should be barefoot as much as possible. You should be wearing barefoot shoes because you're surrounded by that. But then it's just not the case. And really, I don't know the percentage, obviously, but a very large percentage of people, that's not even on their radar in the slightest. And it's not hard to get reminded of that because you go for a walk along the street or you go for a run and you just see 95, that's why I'm getting my percentages from, 95% of people are in your modern conventional shoe, and it's not even on their radar that feet matter or shoes matter, or if it is, then they've been educated that they need the most supportive, the most cushioned, the most arch controlled shoes that they can get, because that's what is healthy for their feet, and anything else is like, well, it doesn't, of course my feet need support. It's like, of course my feet need support, because that's just the narrative that has been.
It's an ingrained education. It's an ingrained education from when kids are like 3 or 4 years of age that they need support on the foot, and support is good for the foot in any situation. That's just what people think, and I would say 95% is a generous. To think that 5% no, I don't think 5% no.
More like
because if you know, then you don't wear that shoe, because the message is so powerful, and that's what I try and portray or try and put out there. That the message, like if you know this information, you would change. Like it's that black and white, really. I think that's when you live it.
I'm trying to think of an analogy. It's like if you
smoking is a great analogy. Yeah.
Well,
but smoking is addictive.
It's addictive.
Yeah. So that's a bit of a clouded situation.
A crappy analogy. It's not a good analogy, but I like to sometimes think about it like sometimes people are just hitting themselves on the thumb with a hammer and just over and over again. Why does my thumb hurt?
Yeah.
Or like why does my hand hurt? Keep hitting themselves, and then you go, oh, it's because you're hitting yourself with that hammer, and it's like, oh, and then once you see, it's like, and once you understand, oh, of course, the hammer is hurting my hand. You just don't keep hitting yourself with the hammer.
Yeah. I like that analogy.
And it's, it's very rudimentary.
Yeah.
And sometimes I guess the problem is it's not as obvious as, hitting it. Like if you're wearing shoes, supportive cushioned shoes, you may not end up with foot pain, or you may not end up with any pain for years and years and years, and it's not necessarily as easy to make the connection between the shoes and the foot pain.
Yeah.
But if you do teach someone the very basics of how the body works and how it adapts, then you can say, see how your foot is doing less in this shoe, that means it gets weaker. And see how your foot is more restricted in this shoe, that means your foot is getting stiffer. And then it's very, you can't argue against that. It's just
when something goes wrong, therefore you need more support.
Yeah.
And so that's the model.
Yeah.
So from 3 or 4 years of age, you're in a heeled supportive shoe, and then when you're 22 and have an issue, we give you more support. And then when you're 40 and have another issue, you get more support, and so it goes. Yeah,
it's a cycle, and it kind of is like smoking in that sense. Like the more you have of it, the more you need it.
Yeah.
And the deeper you go into that cycle, the harder it is to get out of that cycle. And the more your body does kind of get addicted in a loose way to the shoes, because then you get the people that go, I tried going barefoot and it hurts. And I ended up with, XYZ injury because I went barefoot. And so the body, it's over time has just gotten, its load tolerance has decreased and decreased and decreased until going barefoot is too much load and it doesn't like it. But the main thing is then trying to get that message across that it's about load management. It's not about barefoot being good or bad, or shoes being good or bad. It's about what loads are you exposing your body to, and how is that helping your body adapt, or how is that causing, I guess, maladaptations in your body, or adaptations that you don't want. Because I think everyone, as much as anyone might like shoes or even like their orthotics, I think most people would want to be able to go for a walk on the beach barefoot. I mean, I do see a fair few people on the beach with shoes on, but I feel like, most people intuitively understand that, that feels good to have bare feet on grass or bare feet on sand. But for some reason, they don't extend that into their daily life or into other aspects of their life.
So just to bring a point together, at uni we were taught, if someone comes in with heel pain, to make sure they, there's usually a reason that their foot's been overloaded and got sore. Have they been walking barefoot on the beach? Have they been climbing ladders?
Oh, really?
Have they been climbing ladders? Like, they're the red flags for someone with heel pain. To go back and think, why weren't we asking? Why wasn't I asking as a 19, 20-year-old student why our foot can't tolerate being barefoot on the beach, and why our foot can't tolerate climbing?
Yeah.
If they're the things that trigger pain, and then totally natural things, why are we... podiatry students would still be being told this today. If someone comes in with heel pain, these are the questions to ask. This is what to look out for. Something that's stressed their foot out. And this is an argument about where research is in place. Our research should be with the null hypothesis of a a barefoot that has never been exposed to footwear that is supportive or healed, because then we'd be able to compare what a natural functioning foot is, and we all have the opportunity to have, nearly all of us have the opportunity to have natural functioning feet, but our research is never about that. It's about always shod.
Yeah.
So anyway, when you're talking about barefoot, that just made me on the beach.
Yeah.
It made me think, like, it's so warped that as podiatrists we don't ask the question, and I do now ask the question: why is your foot not strong enough to cope with being on the beach?
Exactly.
Being bare.
Good. The conversation. So it's interesting that the conversation is still about load management. They still people understand that, and especially podiatrists understand that we need to address, or at least understand and address, the loads that the foot have been exposed to. So, have you been walking on the beach? Have you been climbing ladders or whatever?
Yeah.
And they're trying to find what's overloaded the foot. And instead of the conversation being about how do we make you more resilient to load, the conversation is about how do we take away those loads.
Yeah.
Or it's like, well, your foot can't handle being barefoot. Let's take away the load of being barefoot by putting an orthotic in.
Yeah.
Or take away the neurological control required to be barefoot by putting support into the arch, and so you don't have to worry about your pronation anymore.
Yeah.
Which again then perpetuates the issue and makes you less likely to tolerate load and less likely to.
That's right.
To be able to control the movements of your foot.
Yeah. So we're adding something to the problem rather than taking something away.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what the Foot Collective's message is. Let's take away stuff instead of add things to the problem. Let's take away the shoes. Let's take away the orthotics. Take away even manual therapies, and go back to the basics of using your body as it's intended to use, and just let it innately heal. And still manage load. Obviously, you're going to have to, because we're increasing the load in some cases exponentially when you take shoes off and orthotics off. But also modern shoes with a heel exacerbate loads to, they magnify anything that's going on in a foot. So if I'm watching a foot and I'm seeing more likely, like someone staying in that pronatory moment for a bit longer than they should before they start supinating again. These are normal actions and normal movements of the foot. If I'm watching someone do that barefoot, when they put a heeled shoe on, that's happening at a magnified level. And there's your increased load. So let's take away the heeled shoe, and straight away we've changed the load in a way that's taking things away rather than putting an orthotic in place that's adding it to slow down that extra pronatory moment.
For sure.
And can I just say, podiatry, I think, orthotics is a boom of the 60s and 70s when there was a big running boom, when a whole lot of sedentary people started running, and instead of teaching them how to run properly, we just put heels and cushions on shoes, and that didn't stop them from running inefficiently. They were still running inefficiently. If anything, it gave them opportunity to run inefficiently even more for longer. And then from there, we needed to start using anti-pronatory orthotics because of that extra pronatory moment that comes with wearing a heeled shoe. A heeled shoe came about because of inefficient running, overstriding. And so that's the podiatry boom, and it's a relatively new profession. It's like 60 years old that we've been doing all this biomechanical stuff. And so it's not too late to change it to some extent, but it's pretty set in its ways. And the biggest issue is that we don't question the footwear. It's just not questioned. It's never said, oh, let's take that heel away. They might say, well, let's go from a really supportive one to a shoe to a semi-supported shoe. They might look at things like that, but they don't look at the big picture of taking the shoe away. They don't look at the closed toe box that pushes the big toe sideways, and which is the big toe being straight is another huge stopper of that pronatory movement. So when you push it sideways, then the foot's going to keep rolling through off on the inside. So they don't see that as why it was happening in the first place. So if we just take that away, then we don't have to do the whole orthotic thing. It's not rocket science, really.
Yeah, you've touched on so many important points.
Sorry.
There. No, it's all good. I'm gonna just coming back to what you said about taking away things, and I think I was chatting to Mick about this yesterday, how we can take, ideally we want to take away things that the body, quote unquote, needs to feel good. You should just feel good and strong and mobile in your body without these added technologies or even manual therapies. of course, there is a place for those technologies and manual therapies and surgeries and medications in certain contexts.
Yes.
But it's all, what we were saying is it all comes down to the narrative of how those things are prescribed. As in, they aren't prescribed as a fix to the issue. They're prescribed as a temporary tool to help you then work on the things that you need to work on in order to not need that tool anymore. And I think that's the big part that's missing. And then what you said about podiatry being quite a young profession, and you know, they're looking at all these biomechanics and everything. And then there's this, you know, like you said, a big running boom of all these sedentary people going running. And do you think it seems to have just sort of spiraled? Like, obviously when people were originally running, then like I think the original Nike shoe was quite minimalist.
Yes.
You know, like little sprinter, what are they called?
Like a waffle.
Yeah, like a waffle kind of sprinter shoe.
Like a Dunlop volley.
Shoes.
Yeah, not dissimilar to a Dunlop volley.
And so it started off like that, but then all these people with desk jobs and heeled shoes that were fashionable and are still fashionable, then go running. Their ankles are tight, they don't know how to run, or their joints aren't operating at a point so that they can self-organize and run efficiently. And then there's this boom of supportive footwear, like you said, heeled footwear, and then adding more support. And then it seems like it's just spiraled and spiraled because it's like, well, the only thing we know how to do is add more support. So let's just build it up. And then you end up with shoes like Hoka's, which are like extreme. Like at first when I saw those, I actually thought it was a joke. I think it's like their hiking shoes.
Oh, it's a trail running shoe with a sweep out the back.
Yeah. And I actually thought it was a joke. And even I looked into it. And
Hoka themselves, like I see clients with Hokas and orthotics, and basically it's a moon boot from the ankle down. Like your foot is offline in that environment. Yeah. Like I put on a Hoka and my foot was offline, let alone adding an orthotic to it as well. And one is putting support in one way and one's doing it the other way. So really your foot is offline. And it's like when a podiatrist can't do anything else, I think that's a go-to, because it does stop the foot moving and it will take their pain away, but it's going to load up other joints and
you're going to end up with other issues.
Yeah. It's not a long-term solution at all. So it's self-perpetuating. It's getting worse and worse. And we're seeing kids as they get younger, are getting into their little Nikes, little Asics from a younger age, younger and younger. The message from the child healthcare nurse, the person that helps you through when you're having a baby and those first few years with advice, feeding, all this type of stuff. As soon as your child needs a shoe, it's that they'd be in a wide, thin, flat and flexible for some reason, the narrative changes as soon as they... first, they're in that shoe because they're learning to walk and their foot's developing. Like I can tell you, at 43, my foot is still developing. It doesn't ever change. I have clients over 80 that their feet are still developing by just working on their feet. And so to say that once they're 3 and going to kinder, 3 and 4 going to kinder, and putting them in their little Nikes and Asics for that support and that cushioning and that heel counter and that stiffness in the shoe, it just doesn't make any sense. But that age is getting younger. Like soon, maybe we're going to see new walkers in those little shoes.
I already have.
Yeah. And so when this is happening, it's like just prepare. It's like school. It's preparing you for a life of inefficient movement. You know, like if you have to sit at school for 12 years and then go to uni and sit for another 4 years, you've sat for 16 years of your developmental life. And it's not dissimilar to wearing a shoe from a very young age. You're just getting ready to be in a heeled shoe forever. And people say, I can't go without a heel. Well, I understand that because you were in a heel since you were 3. The body has developed that way.
Yeah, you can't go without the heel right now. But
yeah, it's just what they're saying when I'm suggesting they go without it. And look, I'm then educating them as to why that is.
Yeah.
Or even the way the body organises itself. When you put someone in a flat shoe, as soon as you put someone in a heeled shoe, their head is still above their ankles. And so for that to happen, even though they're tipping forward, for their head to still be above their ankles, their body has to organise itself in a way that the knee's in a more flexed position.
Pelvis ankles more anterior tilted.
There's a whole chain of events. So when someone first puts a flat shoe on, often I hear that they feel like they're falling backwards because their brain says, oh, I'm putting a shoe on, and they're so used to a heeled shoe. And we're not talking like high heels or even wedges. We're just talking like a normal runner that you see everyone in the street. that their body's so used to putting a shoe on and having to reorganize that as soon as they put a flat shoe on, it's like tricking it and it goes to reorganize and feels like it's falling backwards. So our brain and our bodies are amazing adapters, and they adapt to something that's totally foreign to it, to be in a heel all the time, and they do it from a young age and they do it easily. The beauty of that is to harness it to adapt back the other way, and to come back the other way, I think, is a whole lot easier because it's the innate. Doesn't have to be learned. It's the body's natural way, and it wants to get back into that way, and it heals better and functions so much better in that way. So that's the good news, that I think you can harness that power of the body's ability to change for the better as well.
Yeah, that's a really important point that I think a lot of people don't realize, and probably traditionally a lot of health professionals and doctors haven't paid enough attention to, is that the body is constantly developing. We have obviously a big period of development from, in our early years, but it is constantly developing and adapting to the loads that it gets exposed to. And even neurologically and neurophysiologically, there's a really good example of how the body will adapt to something very unnatural. Is they did this experiment, I guess, where they would give people glasses that flipped the world upside down. So it's like mirrored glasses, and so they would see the world upside down, and within about a couple of days, maybe it was like 2 or 3 days of wearing these glasses, maybe don't quote me specifically on the days, but X amount of time wearing these glasses, their whole world shifted so that they could see normally with these glasses, and so they're seeing upright again.
Yeah.
And then they take the glasses off, and in a much shorter time, the brain switches back.
Okay, yeah.
And it's kind of a cool example of what you were talking about, how it's, let's switch back to what's natural, and the brain and the body will adapt. And yes, it may take time, and yes, it may be confusing and challenging. Like, I'm sure when those people took the glasses off and the world then went upside down again because they'd adapted to the glasses, then it's like, it's harder to get around at first, and it's harder to see where you're going, and harder to, do motor tasks. But then pushing through that, understanding that, you don't want to be wearing those glasses all the time. So just get the glasses off and figure out how to get back to the natural way. I think that's a cool example.
It is. It's a really good example.
How the brain and the body can work.
And you wouldn't send them out in the bush on a trail run.
Yeah.
And this is the load variant there. You would just have them in an environment that they feel safe in, and that's not too much to start with as they transition from one to the other.
Yeah, where they just have to sit, stand, walk, balance, maybe, just very simple things. And then as their brain adapts back, then you can go out into a trail run.
Yeah.
And it's the exact same thing with the feet and the body, is just getting a really clear picture of where you're at currently. And wherever you're at doesn't mean you're a good or a bad person, or you've failed or you've succeeded. It's just you're at this point, and you want to get to this point. You either want to get out of pain, or you want to perform better with running, or you want to be able to actually get back into running safely, or whatever it is, whatever goal. It's just going, okay, let's take a picture of where you're at. Where do you want to go? What are the steps to get there? And inevitably it comes down to gradual loading and appropriate recovery. Sleep, nutrition, meditate, like non-sleep, deep rest is what how Andrew Huberman refers to it. And then just, gradually exposing your body to challenge and discomfort, and getting comfortable with that discomfort, so that becomes the norm.
Yeah. And that's what I do as a natural podiatrist. I just measure in a very rudimentary way as to where someone's at, and help educate them as to where they're at and where they need to go to become functional without pain, where they need to go to become functional without using these words. But that's basically what I'm doing. Just working out where someone's at in their movement, or in their in their movement, or in their functional capacity, and then just helping them from a starting point work towards something that means they're without pain most of the time.
Yeah, and actually, let's talk about the Natural Podiatry. I know you've done a full 4 or 5 podcasts with Nick on his TFC audio project about it, so we don't have to go into that much detail. But just tell me about the project, or tell people about the project, and I guess, maybe a bit more about your approach with Natural Podiatry, because obviously I understand it's less about the feet and more about the whole body, but, starting at the feet.
Yeah, so natural podiatry is going to be, or is, it's happening now. We've got the curriculum. We're just filling it out and coming up with the content for the curriculum. It's going to be an educational program where other podiatrists that align with being a natural podiatrist can come together and form a community that then grows and develops what natural podiatry is. Just like the Foot Nerd program is for overall health and is constantly changing and adapting, natural podiatry will as well. And I think there are, I don't know how many, but I know at least a dozen in Australia that are this way aligned. And so you could say maybe there are 200 around the world that are this way aligned, and we're all just kind of doing our own thing. And the collective power of all those people coming together and sharing their knowledge is going to be better for the profession of natural podiatry, the profession of podiatry as well, because we'll become a voice within we won't be just like the black sheep of the Melbourne podiatry scene. It will be, we'll actually have a place within the podiatry community, so that when you finish uni, if this is the way you align, then you can become a natural podiatrist. And then we'll be able to share our knowledge as to how we go about looking after clients. And so then the community will benefit, which brings me to the next benefit of natural podiatry is that when someone's walking down the street and they want to go and see the podiatrist because they've got a foot issue, a lot of the time these days they don't, and other health professionals don't even refer to a podiatrist because the outcome is often an orthotic-based outcome. And it's less so now than it used to be with a new wave of podiatrists, and there's some podiatrists that are definitely not aligned to doing orthotics all the time. I need to clarify that because people get a bit upset when I say all podiatrists just prescribe orthotics. But that's the community's perception of podiatry now. So I want them to be able to see that there's a different choice and know of a different choice, rather than just being like the one or two guys or people here in Melbourne doing it and a couple in New South Wales. I want it to be a choice that people have to go and see a natural podiatrist, because that aligns with their way of looking at their own health, because they want to be educated and they want to know what to do to look after themselves. And I think that's when it will become really powerful. So yeah, we're just at the stage where we're going to be launching later this year to get members to the Natural Podiatry Society. I just call it Natural Podiatry. I don't really like the word society. It sounds a bit exclusive. So I just call it Natural Podiatry. To get members to Natural Podiatry, podiatrists will pay for that. And then it will be a lifelong membership, and it will be like the Foot Nerd program that you bring with you your experience and share it with the group and feed that back into what the curriculum is. And because as we know, as we spoke about before, universities are a bit antiquated in their ability to change what they're teaching. And this means we can just keep changing it, keep changing the curriculum. And that's what natural podiatry is going to be. So at the moment, I'm the official leader, but Nick is the brainchild behind this, and that's Nick in Canada. And then we have two podiatrists in the States, Dr. Stephen Bowie and Ray McClanahan of Correctos. And then we also have Rena Harris, who's a podiatrist that is totally aligned with this in London. And so we're all putting our, we have shares of what we have to add into the curriculum. And then once we have enough, we'll start launching for members.
Yeah. Epic.
Yeah.
And so I think what you said about either young podiatrists or other podiatrists who maybe have been practicing for a while, fresh podiatrists, and other podiatrists who may have been practicing for some time, for them to know that there is another way and that there's other people doing things a different way is very huge, because I think people can get stuck in that thought of I kind of think the body needs to be loaded and that includes the feet, but I see everyone is doing it this way, so that kind of must be the way. And I think it's such an important thing. And also in terms of health as a business or podiatry as a business or anything like that, then there are business models that get set up and tried and tested over time, because obviously if you're a health professional, you've got to make money, you've got to support your family, you've got to eat, you're going to, so on and so forth. So, everyone says don't get into a health profession if you want to make a lot of money, which is fair enough because it's, I mean, unless you're a surgeon or something, in which case. But anyway, you know, we obviously, health professionals are coming from a good place, I think. You know, as a whole, as a vast majority, health professionals get into the industry because they want to help people get out of pain or achieve goals and, you know, become healthier.
Yeah.
And, you know, there is, at the same time, there is business models that get set up so that we can make money, so that we can eat. But then those business models get quite entrenched. And then, you know, if you go in and open a podiatry practice or you go and work in one, then you learn that, okay, well, this is the way that we make money. And often that gets tied around a narrative of this is the best way to help the client. But then when there's a mismatch between the two, either you realize, like you did, as a podiatrist with 15, 20 years experience, you realized, oh, maybe this isn't the best way. Or you come out fresh from uni and you go, I think this isn't the best way based on what I know about my body. Maybe you've trained, you know, you've done a lot of strength training or, you know, natural movement, things like that. And you're like, oh, this makes a lot more sense to me. Then you do have that battle, I guess, between the mismatch between how you make money as a podiatrist or, you know, as XYZ health professional and how you believe you can help someone the best. And so then finding a new way, you can either make your own way or you can find other people who are doing it already and learn from them. And so I guess that's what you've done, is you've had that transition from being a podiatrist with practicing one way in a traditional sense, transitioning completely to a full natural podiatry approach. And then now you're able to share that experience, which is really invaluable experience, to be able to share that with other podiatrists who are that way inclined.
Yeah, I was lucky. I was in a business partnership that set me up to a point financially and with the backing of enough clients for my regular work to be able to then go, okay, I'm going to be a natural podiatrist. This is how I'm going to do it. But it is a different model, and part of the curriculum is teaching that model or teaching ways around that model. Unfortunately, podiatry traditionally has a real set around making money out of orthotics. I've known podiatrists get key performance indicated out of their jobs because they're not prescribing enough orthotics. Yep. They're still getting great results with their clients, but they're not prescribing an orthotic. Like, to me, that sounds like perfect, you know, or they're not seeing someone often enough. Whereas I might have an initial consultation of an hour and 15 minutes and then catch up with someone a month later, or just act as a resource for them from then on. And I'm not even getting any money out of that client anymore. I even had someone say this week, wow, this is weird. I'm leaving and I'm not making another appointment from a health professional. Like, I was like, that's gold for me, because that means I've educated them to a point where they can look after themselves, but use me as a resource. Like, if there's something big comes up, sure, we'll make another appointment, but I don't need you to come next week because I've got 5 other people that need this education as well coming to see me, you know? And so natural podiatry is going to be about educating in that realm as well. And I think natural podiatry is not going to be about how to be a natural podiatrist in terms of the nuts and bolts of assessment and treatment, but it's going to be more about support being a podiatrist in this realm. And, you know, so the curriculum is not going to be saying this is how you treat a child with this condition. You know, it's more about look at the natural principles of how a child should be moving and apply that. So we're going to be teaching you to look through a different lens, and same with business. It's looking through a different lens, and I've successfully done it, but I still have a large proportion of routine podiatry. And for those that don't know, routine podiatry is what most podiatrists are doing, and that's just cutting people's toenails and getting rid of dead skin and ingrown toenails and corns, which is less sexy for podiatry, but it is still can have a huge natural podiatry can still have a huge influence on it. Because for every corn I've seen, if they were never in a shoe that squished their toes, there would not be a corn in nearly 100% of cases. For every ingrown toenail, if people were just not squishing their toes into shoes, then they wouldn't have an ingrown toenail. So natural podiatry is relevant across the board in podiatry. And I was going to talk about something else before as well, before we got onto natural podiatry so much. And we're flitting around, but I think it's all interesting. In that, you know, we never stop adapting. I wanted to make a point about that because we see a client that's had a stroke when they're 60 and they're still, tapping the foot, providing feedback for a barefoot, giving therapy for feet, because the body is still going to adapt when they're 60 when they've had a stroke. I just want to make that point. So it's kind of out of the realm of what we were just talking about, but I just think it's really relevant that other health professionals use our feet and use all the principles of natural podiatry, yet podiatrists don't. Traditional podiatrists don't. But osteos, chiros, physios, they're all open to this way of working and they do it every day, but natural podiatrists don't. And natural podiatry is kind of like, sometimes I wish I had exercise physiology across my name instead of podiatrist, because then people would come to me expecting exercises, or maybe even better, habitual changer, because that's probably the most powerful tool for natural podiatry to create habitual change in people's lives. Yeah, so I've just totally ruined the whole topic. But I had some things I wanted to get off my head.
It's touching on something that I think is also really important. Is that I think it is still important that it's, like you said, in many ways, all health professionals that are aligned with certain values will generally practice in the same way, and that is looking at how the body functions as a whole, what key things it might be missing in terms of movements or loads, or what key things they might be needing to take away, like cushioned shoes or whatever. Or braces, any kind of brace, anything that limits movement, anything that limits movement and movement variability. And at the same time, having those distinctions where you're a podiatrist or a natural podiatrist, then people go, okay, I go to that person for my foot. And then it's a conversation starter. So like you said, you don't necessarily want to be seeing someone over and over and over again, because a big part of your role is providing the education that they need to take more control of what they're doing in their life and take more control of their foot health. But then also you in your role and with your expertise may not be the best person to help someone with an ongoing strength program. That would be an exercise physiologist.
Yes.
Or, it's that example. You're not necessarily the person that needs to talk to someone about their diet, because it's not your scope of practice and it's not your expertise. But at least you start the conversation about natural foot health and therefore natural health overall as a body, as a human. And then you're able to facilitate and direct them to people who are in a position to help them with those things that they do need help with. And that's where I think, obviously having the Society of Natural Podiatrists to work together and support each other as natural podiatrists, but then also for that to be so closely linked with the Foot Collective, which we will be rolling out a TFC Health Pro program as well, where we do connect all of these like-minded practitioners, where that if someone's a foot nerd or a TFC Health Pro, then they're on the same wavelength with you about all of this stuff, but they might have a different expertise. And you go, okay, well, look, I want you to get out of these shoes. For your foot issue, I want you to transition to barefoot or minimalist footwear. I want you to start doing these foot exercises, for example. Obviously it's case by case.
Yeah.
And I also want you to start strengthening your overall body, depending on their goals, but start strengthening or I think it'd be really important for you to look at your nutrition, or really important to look at your sleep. Here's someone in our community who has the expertise in that area, and and they'll also be supporting what you say about feet.
Yeah.
And because the issue with referrals is that you might refer someone to a nutritionist down the road who you don't really know, which obviously it doesn't work this way all the time, but you're like, there's a nutritionist down the road, or there's a nutritionist in your practice or something like that.
Yeah.
But you guys don't know each other. She doesn't know how you work necessarily, and so on. And then that nutritionist goes, oh, what? He told you to get out of your orthotics. Oh no, go see my podiatrist. You should get a second opinion from my podiatrist. And whereas we need to have consistency in that understanding and that appreciation and that focus on natural health as a whole, and each be approaching it from our own areas of expertise.
Yeah, and I think natural podiatry can be a link for that for other health professionals to come in and see where the natural podiatrist is in the area, because my biggest referrals are osteos and some Pilates studios, and they may have found me on Instagram or through word of mouth, but there must be so many other osteos and other health professionals that want a podiatrist that's that way aligned, and they don't even know where to start looking, and so they hesitantly say and go and see this podiatrist. This is the one on the corner. But if they can find a natural podiatrist because of natural podiatry, because it becomes known, then that is also a source of referrals for other natural podiatrists. So, yeah, I think that would be helpful. This is the collective, being a collective of sorts makes it far more powerful.
Absolutely.
To become known, to know that that's an option. Yeah.
And obviously, the business model of a natural podiatrist, there is a whole podcast on this, so I do recommend looking into that. But you talk about on that podcast, you and Nick talk about how the business model currently for traditional podiatry is orthotic prescription, as in a large part. Obviously, you get some consultation fees, but in terms of, like those KPIs that you said, and actually bumping up the amount of income that comes into the clinic, then orthotic prescription is pretty huge. And I think we as health professionals, especially I've found in our circle of people who are really, really about helping people and about taking things away, we can have that hesitancy to sell something, to say, oh, you should get in these shoes. And it is like, it feels like, oh, it's weird. Like, you kind of want to just be like, well, do what you want. But at some point, someone does need to be just told, no, those shoes are causing you your issues. If you want to stop getting those issues, then we need to get you out of those shoes, and we need to get you in something that promotes the natural function of the foot, because that's what we do here with natural podiatry, is restore or facilitate the natural function of the foot. We're not going to be able to do that if you're spending 8, 10, 12 hours in shoes or footwear that restricts or alters the natural foot function. And so I think including that as part of the business model, you might make less money on shoes than you make on orthotics, but that is probably the most valuable thing you can give someone. Or the most valuable part of the education is, let's address the environment that your foot spends the most amount of time in, and that is generally people's shoes.
And as you know, I was really reticent to sell shoes, because I think it clouds my message. If I'm telling someone that they need to change their shoes and this is the style of shoe, and people go, oh, where do I get that from? Oh, I sell it as well. Then suddenly it clouds that I just told them that. So that's why I was so slow to do it. But minimalist shoes are really hard to come by. If you go to the Athlete's Foot or Active Feet or any of the big shoe stores, there's not one minimalist shoe there. Merrill sells some shoes. But there's like 2 in a store of 50 pairs of shoes, and so and I am actually the best placed to sell a shoe because I know foot function. And so why should someone go to a shoe store to get something that is not relevant to their natural foot function and have it sold to them by someone who's trying to make a sale? And so I don't advertise that I sell shoes much at all, as in I don't advertise it much. I advertise it a little bit because I think it's important people know that I can be a source for shoes as well, but I don't want it to cloud the message of natural foot function. And it's a bonus to my wage, definitely, to have shoe sales, but it's not the be all and end all. So I do it more of as a service. There's one shop here in Melbourne that sells minimalist shoes, and they're not close to where I work. And so it's also a disadvantage to my clients if I don't sell it, because they probably won't go and get the shoe because it's so far away. And so I'm actually just making the transition easier for them. But it is natural podiatry. The curriculum will have a lot about the way the business can run and how to make it successful. And it's actually more satisfying because people are becoming reliant upon themselves because of the way you educate them. And they talk to their friends about how well they're feeling, and then they send their friends, and you're not purely an educator, but more of an educator than anything else. And that's highly satisfying as a natural podiatrist.
And it's a better service for someone if you're recommending something based on their individual foot function, from what you've seen. And obviously your recommendations aren't always going to be, oh, you have to get this Vivo barefoot shoe, or you have to get this. It's going to be case by case, and you might suggest some kind of interim shoe, or you might suggest taking the orthotic out first. And, it's a gradual thing. But if they're here learning from you, getting education from you, and learning about their feet, then it's a much better service if they can actually try on shoes or at least experience them while they're with you, and you can talk to them and go, so how does that feel based on these factors, and you can work with different things to change or different fits or whatever that actually results in a better outcome for that client. And that's what we're all about, is just getting better outcomes. And if it helps boost a little bit of income, then that's good for you. And also it's better for the client.
Yes.
And I think it's very important to remember that what you're doing as a natural podiatrist is reducing someone's reliance on seeing a health professional in the long term.
Yeah.
Because even if the shoes were $600 and your consultation was $400 and they spent $1,000, but that meant that they never had to go and see a podiatrist again.
Yeah.
That would save them thousands in the long run versus someone who goes back and gets custom orthotics again and again and again every year and sees the podiatrist again and again, but still has pain and issues popping up throughout the rest of their body. So I think that's the other thing with these services, is that if we're taking more time with someone, more really one-on-one time, caring about them and educating them and really delving in and helping them become a more independent, resilient human, then that is worth a lot more than the alternative.
Definitely.
And so you can charge more for your service, and you've found that you have been able to increase your fees for the service because of the amount that goes into it, because of all the pre and post work that's involved. It's not just a consultation. You do a lot of pre-work, you do a lot of post-work, you talk to the person beforehand. They can give you a call afterwards or weeks after, and all of this time that's involved. But it allows you to charge more for your service and then to have yourself booked out in advance, which you were saying that you are.
Yeah.
In a way that gives you that financial security that you do need just from a logistical point of view.
Yeah. And in this realm, I'm an idealist or a purist. Like I would say that, where you can all... But in the clinic, you're dealing with real life. And so then you have to become a realist. And footwear might not always be easily changed. And so natural podiatry is also going to be about those different levels of being able to bring in natural function. And the point in the manifesto that talks about that is that our primary objective is natural foot function. Like if you just keep that as the lens you're always looking through, it's a huge realm. It doesn't mean everyone has to go barefoot in the bush tomorrow. It's just taking those baby steps and just keeping natural foot function as that primary objective, as to how someone can heal, because the body will innately heal if you give it the right environment. Yeah.
Speaking of barefoot in the bush, we've been hanging out this afternoon, and you've been giving me a bit of an assessment and helping me out with this foot injury that I sustained. And I thought it would be good to chat about on a podcast about feet and footwear with you, because it is quite a good learning lesson. And I just put out a video today about it, and I put out, it's been 3 weeks since it happened. And originally when the injury happened, I put out another video about the importance of context when it comes to footwear. And I think it's been a really great experience for me because, first of all, I've never really had any foot pain. I do have a lot of empathy. I've had chronic pain in other areas like my shoulder and my knees. And I do have a lot of empathy for people who do experience that persistent pain because I know how frustrating it is. But I've never actually experienced foot pain specifically. And long story short, I was out in the bush. Mind you, I wasn't barefoot. So this is one of the rare times that I'm not barefoot. But I've been using these Disrupt footwear, which is the TFC footwear, which are very thin, very minimal shoes, basically like creek shoes. I've been using them as a nice slip-on thing out at TFC Bush 1, which is our sort of nature reserve kind of area. And anyway, we went out into unfamiliar terrain to get firewood. And then I'm wearing these disrupts and I'm carrying a big heavy log on my shoulder and then walking along, not really looking where I'm going because I'm thinking about this big heavy log. And then, but also, interestingly, I just had this thought, because I had shoes on, I had this idea that I was protected. So I'm just sort of stomping through. And then there's a stick at the exact right angle that just punctures straight through the disrupt deep into the ball of my foot, just next to the base of my big toe, and nice and deep, like a good few centimeters. And so there you go. Nice big puncture wound, gets infected, despite cleaning it out in the bush, gets infected, really nasty infection, needed antibiotics and so on. And so now 3 weeks later, it's still having issues and I'm a little bit impatient. I'm like, oh, can it just be fixed now? But, I'm still limping. I can't put much pressure through it. And I'm having these issues. So in one sense, it's like, it's good to be barefoot as much as possible, but safety first. Obviously, we talk about NTFC, protect, correct, develop. And so protecting your feet is obviously a very important function of footwear.
But protect in that sense is usually take off the crappy shoes.
I know, but yes, but acknowledging the importance of...
What should footwear be?
Yeah, it's protection.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't have to protect ourselves from the protection.
Yeah.
So we should be wearing protection that facilitates as much natural movement as possible. But then also understanding the risk management involved in what activities you're doing and what you're stepping on and all of that. Because, I think a lot of people's risk tolerance is very low. And so they go, oh, you're barefoot along the street. Aren't you worried you're going to step on glass? I've only stepped on glass once while walking barefoot, and that was when I was on my phone.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't looking where I was going. Whereas I've been around glass a lot and you just dodge it, or you can sort of see, and I don't recommend this to everyone, but you can see what glass is dangerous and what glass isn't. And I've walked across glass before and it's just chunks and it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, this is an extraordinarily rare occasion.
Yes.
Of a puncture wound that went through a shoe.
Yeah.
And it's a very minimal shoe. But I am dealing with barefooters all the time, and as are you, and this is not an often occurring situation.
No, exactly.
But it's a huge lesson.
It's a sign from the universe. I needed to have some foot pain in my life. But it also, just acknowledging, like I do have some Vivo barefoot trackers, which are a heavier duty leather boot with, a thicker sole. And for certain activities, I may need to sacrifice on the mobility of the shoe and the flexibility and everything of the shoe in order to provide a level of safety whereby I can just stomp around with heavy logs or use a chainsaw or whatever and not be very concerned about my foot health because obviously we do have to protect our feet from the footwear that causes it issues. But if that's what we're doing most of the time, if we're barefoot and in minimal, as minimal shoes as possible most of the time, then having your foot in a thicker boot while you're doing heavy work, if it's a more rare occurrence, which it is for me currently, then that's fine. You sacrifice a bit on that and you get the safety, and then you don't have as much risk of these injuries. And even though, like, I might go out to bush one and be in my disrupts for years, and that might never happen to me.
Yeah, but it did.
But it did happen. And then it's just now when I go into unfamiliar terrain where I'm collecting heavy wood or using tools and chainsaws and axes and things like that, then I'll probably wear my boots. Yeah. And then once I'm done with that work, then I'll take my boots off and go barefoot or wear the disrupts. And it's just acknowledging that there's no one right way. It's not like you have to be barefoot all the time, and it's not like you have to be in minimal shoes or
all the time either.
All the time, yeah. I mean, and it's not like people go, oh, but I want to be able to wear high heels, and it's like, great, wear high heels, but you put your feet and your body in the best position possible for most of the time, and then when you do go into the other footwear that maybe isn't as ideal, then your body can handle it, your feet can handle it. And if you lay that foundation of functional capacity and movement health, then you can get away with those things. It's just more when everything accumulates and everything in your day-to-day is sort of weakening and stiffening, then that's when it all becomes much more of a problem.
So that brings up a few points for me. A shoe should merely protect you from heat, cold, and sharp things. And obviously that shoe wasn't protecting you from sharp things, so it wasn't performing its duty.
Exactly.
But that's what a shoe should be, and that's what a shoe traditionally was. But now there's a whole lot of societal expectations around shoes that put heels on them and make them pointy, all this type of thing. And so the workplace is a really, like, there's probably the most oft asked question is, what shoes can I wear to work, like on the work site? Because they need a steel cap and it needs to be a thick sole. And so I do have some builders in that tracker, but mostly it's about, like, especially if you're on a union run site, you need to have a steel cap. Like, there's very strict rules about this. So then it becomes all about doing the right thing the rest of the time.
Exactly.
Like, if you're doing 40 hours a week on your feet at work and that's non-negotiable, then it's all about doing the rest of the time. For me, I can, like, as an example, I don't need to wear a shoe like that at all. So I don't have to do so much of the extra stuff. I don't have to do the exercises so much. I don't have to do the toe spaces so much because my feet are free most of the time. But for someone that's putting their foot in that, like, less than ideal environment for 40 hours a week, then you're going to have to do some of those extra things to counter it. And similar with sitting. If we have to sit, then we're going to have to do some counter activities for your hips. If you don't sit, you don't have to do so many counter activities for your hips. So it's just all about your own personal balance. Yeah.
It's like diet, and I love the movement nutrition analogy. Is, you know, if your diet prohibits you getting protein, for example, you just, like, for some reason you only want to eat fruit, you're a fruitarian.
Yeah.
Then supplementing with some protein is going to be pretty important.
Yeah.
But it's not ideal. You'd prefer to get that protein from whole foods, in terms of just physiologically what the body needs.
Yeah.
But, and I'm not actually sure how much protein fruit has in it now that I think about it, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
You can take supplements. It's not ideal, but if that's what you need to do to get by, then fine.
Yeah.
And if you find that it's not working for you, or you don't want to take the supplements, then change your diet. Start eating whole food, or in that work context, is if you're really suffering and you can't get out of your boots because it's non-negotiable at work, find a different job.
Yeah.
It sounds harsh, but you got to take control of your life, and it's just about your priorities. Either your priority is staying at that job and trying your best to manage the symptoms of whatever that situation is, or changing the job.
Yeah.
But I think people can get trapped in this idea of, like, oh, well, I can't change my job and I kind of don't want to do those exercises.
Yeah. So how much do you really want it?
Yeah,
like, if you've got foot pain, this is what gets me. People come to me with foot pain and come back 3 weeks later for a review, and I've still got foot pain. Well, what have you changed? Like, what have we talked about? Oh, I haven't really changed. Well, you know what? Like, what you put in is what you get out with this type of thing. But it is also a long haul, and habitual change takes time. But we all have choices. We have choices. Well, in this privileged society that we live in, we have choices, don't we?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. We have a lot of choices, and I think that sometimes people don't want to see those choices. Sometimes people get trained into thinking they don't have a choice. They get taught or they get educated of, like, oh no, this is the only option. But having awareness of that choice and just taking responsibility for your health, and I think acknowledging people need to think more long term. If you have all the money obviously you need X amount of money to live, but if you retire rich and your health is poor, you're not really going to enjoy that money. I can guarantee. You could ask anyone who's got money and doesn't have their health. I think there's a saying. It's like a healthy man wants many things, or a healthy person wants many things. An unhealthy person only wants one.
Yeah.
And that's to regain their health. And I think people don't... I mean, it's always the way with humans. We're very short-term focused in general, and people don't... And that's because of evolutionary... our evolutionary background of focusing on short-term survival. But it is hard for people to look at the long-term ramifications of the decisions they're making now, because they are in short-term survival mode. But then if they can take that broader bird's eye view and go, hang on, where do I want to be in 10 years? Do I want to be debilitated with pain, or do I want to be moving freely and, enjoying my time with my kids or my grandkids or whatever? And then it's just going, okay, well, what steps do I have to get to get there? Do I need to change my job? Do I need to change my house? Do I need to change my friendship circle? Whatever it is. And hopefully in most cases it's not as extreme, but yeah, just owning the fact that you have a choice, and what are your values, what do you value, and how can you make your life align with those values. Yeah, it got a bit deep there, but
no, I agree. Yeah. And I mean, if we're just talking about shoes, even that we prioritize what other people think or what we think is ideal, there's so many layers to what you're talking about there, and it's relevant on many levels. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and I know we'll have to wrap up soon, but I just wanted to touch on social media and Instagram as an interesting thing, because I've watched your Instagram channel grow over the last couple of years. So Andy on Instagram is @Bryant_podiatrist.
That's right.
And it's really cool because you're it's nothing fancy. You literally take the concepts that you talk about every day and you put it into a little graphic with a picture, and it gets such good engagement. You get so many comments, and you're getting a lot of followers, and people are obviously resonating with what you're putting out. And I've had my own experience with Instagram. I struggled with it, quite frankly, for a good couple of years. I've never been very much of a social media person, and then using it for business, coming off just being a physio and knowing nothing about business or marketing, was an interesting transition for me. I was just interested to hear about your experience and your transition with putting your message out there on social media.
Yeah, as a traditional podiatrist, I didn't use it at all, if you look at my page, it shows the beginnings of me putting stuff on social media, and they're interspersed with stuff from my kids, like riding a bike and just really random stuff that's got nothing to do with me being a podiatrist, really. And I've actually taken some of that stuff away because suddenly there's all these people looking at it. I'm like, I don't really want them to see my kids in their school uniform. That's right. So, so it's you can see how my ideas have developed. And I repost things from my own stuff, like from a year ago, but I read what I wrote and I'm like, I'd explain that differently now, and I change it up. So for me, it's been really good because it's like you can see my growth. And because I went out alone in business 18 months ago and had this realm to really explore being a natural podiatrist, it's been really powerful for me getting new clients. And I didn't expect it to be, but I do use it for that. I use it for two things: to educate the masses, like I like to put out a simple message that makes people think, and also I use it to bring new clients to see me personally. I do a little bit of online, but I don't enjoy the online stuff so much, so I don't encourage it. In fact, when anyone asks me, and I get asked a lot for online consults, I try and find someone in nearby, like wherever they might be in the world, that is aligned with the way I work, and send them there. And that's one of my motives behind Natural Podiatry, because then I'll at least be able to send them to other natural podiatrists rather than, Gait Happens is really big, and she's Court and Joe did have a great list of people that are this way aligned. So I'll often just look up that list and go, well, here's someone else in your area. If it doesn't work out, come and see me. It builds up trust straight away by saying that. But anyway, mostly it's to bring people to see me in the clinic here. And I do that by engaging with people that are in Melbourne, mostly, other health professionals that might refer to me. And so I'm seeing probably 3 or 4 new clients a week because of Instagram. And so therefore I would say it's extraordinarily successful for me. I really enjoy the forum, but I enjoy having a rest from it as well. And I did a big rest over January, and I thought I'd be just full of ideas for how to explain. I just love coming up with new ideas. And so I've just got I'm jotting them down all the time, or if I'm just speaking to a client, I'm coming up with new ideas. I jot them down, just have them in drafts and just get them ready to go when I feel like it. But I thought having a break, I'd be just influx of new ideas, but it was amazing. I didn't think about feet at all, and it was brilliant. And I've got another break coming up in early July, and I'm really looking forward to it because I think it does consume a fair bit of my mind thinking about it. I started on the curriculum for Natural Podiatry this week, and that took up my mind, and suddenly I stopped thinking about how to explain basic foot stuff on Instagram. Like it does take up a fair bit of my mind, but I really enjoy it, and I love coming up with a simple message that explains foot function, because it should be really quite simple. So that's what it is for me. I do, and maybe I'm always surprised by the engagement, but I also have like a policy. If someone can be bothered saying something, that I'll be bothered to say something back, pretty much. If they ask me a question, I'll answer a question sincerely, without anything in depth, and I let them know that I can't be in depth on that forum. Like I'm not rude. And I've been baited a few times, and it's a horrible experience, and it is something that I just avoid at all costs now. So I don't get involved in arguments. I just keep it on my level and control it that way. But I really enjoy the forum.
Yeah, that's good. It sounds like you've got a really balanced approach with it, and I do really enjoy your content, and always love. I always find myself going, oh, why didn't I think of explaining that, or like, why didn't I think of putting that together? Because it is such simple stuff, but then once you see it, you're like, sweet, spot on, and it is very easy to grasp. And I guess maybe especially because of my background and that I align so much with the way you think, but it is clear that it's reaching more people, more and more people, and you're getting more and more comments and more followers, like I said, and that is such a important thing for it, because there are so many people on Instagram, and if those, like I said even more before, if those people are following and curating their feed to be a lot of this empowering, simple, health promoting, function promoting content, then even though they're not getting they're not doing a full course, they start to take on some of those values and those concepts into there. And then when they see other things that are similar, they go, oh, okay, I get it. He said that and he said that. Okay, that makes sense because of this. And like I said, I've had my own struggles with Instagram, but I've found just the ability to connect with people and then to make in-person connections. I just haven't been much of a digital dude. Like I really love connecting with people in person, but I've struggled with that sort of non-face-to-face, especially texting. But using it to facilitate in-person connections, like the workshops, I absolutely love meeting at the workshops. And like you, like I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if it wasn't for Instagram, or I wouldn't, especially not even talking to Nick at all and starting the Foot Collective. So there is so much power in being able to make these connections with other like-minded people in a community, wherever they are, and then to facilitate in-person connections. So, like the whole reason for this trip is we're down for a workshop, and then we've got a hike on Sunday and a park session on the Sunday afternoon, and there's all these people that follow us and that I've never met, but they're keen to come and hang out and move and play, and it is a really, really good feeling.
That's where the gold is. That's where the good stuff is, isn't it? And I have rules for Instagram as well for myself. Like I don't follow anyone that annoys me. So like if I start feeling tense when I'm following them or looking at them, I don't. And then I limit my follows to people that I can engage with as well. Like I'll only follow someone because I'm interested in what they're saying, or if they're a local business as well. That hopefully aligns with the way I work. So I keep it to myself. I do think I'll probably look at it too much because it's like it is an addictive realm.
Literally,
and my wife says that I'm an over poster, but I don't follow any like set social media rules. I just have my own little rules about that type of stuff. And so it seems to be working out for me. But it's like it could so easily take over and do too much. Like our 14-year-old she's got a phone, wants to go on Instagram. I think she should, so she can learn how to use it efficiently and properly. My wife's like, oh no, maybe she shouldn't just yet.
Might be wishful thinking.
Yeah, because it's aiming for our time all the time, like as Nick's opened my eyes to that. Our time is valuable, and it's taking our time, and then in a way we're cashing in on that by other people looking at us, looking at our stuff using their time, and I'm not paying for that, So it's a really could become a really nasty beast, but I'm using it effectively at the moment. It is a nasty beast in general, but it is a very amazing tool when used properly.
it is tough to use it properly. And there's many times where I've found myself just aimlessly scrolling. And
Yeah.
then you catch yourself and you go, geez, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'll catch myself and I'll be like, oh, I don't care. I just want to scroll.
Yeah.
And I'll waste,
Yeah.
half an hour.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't time it, but
I think it's really important to be genuine on it, and I think I am genuine. And then, to just not get upset about stuff. If it upsets you, then just move on.
Yeah,
it's not worth it, and not get your fix of feeling good from your Instagram. Get your fix. Like, I definitely walk my dogs without my phone, and I often post and then leave, and like when I'm about to work for 3 hours and not be able to look at my phone, or when I'm about to go to sleep, so that I'm not feeding back into what's going on there.
Yeah.
But other times I post something and sit there and watch what happens as well. So like, we're all human.
Yeah.
And we have to be of this world. And anyway, like I said, I enjoy it.
Yeah, but I definitely enjoy it too, and I've found, especially having more structure and more rules to my social media use has helped a lot, and knowing what kind of content I want to post each week and things like that. Like, I've been doing the weekly themes lately, and
I like that.
it just helps structure my thoughts and makes me not being like, oh, what do I need to post? And then you get stressed each day about what to post. But
you can be triggered by that as well, though, because when you post something and you get a lot of positive reinforcement, you're more likely to post that again.
Yeah.
And I used to be on Strava when I was a cyclist, and it's social media for athletes, basically.
Yeah.
And so you end up doing more kilometers, doing them faster, because you're getting positive feedback from it. And when I stopped riding, I was still putting my running up there sometimes. And then I did a 50k minimalist shoe hike, and I got massive feedback. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to do more of this. And then I had to self-check, like, why am I doing this?
Yeah, is it for me? Is it for them?
And I have posts on Instagram that I think, that's a brilliant post. That's so exactly what I want to portray. And it does really poorly in terms of the feedback I get. And it's really hard to stick to doing that, because you end up just putting out stuff that's popularist. You can easily fall into the trap of trying to be popular. Yeah. There's a place for that as well, I think. Putting out stuff that's really super simple. Like I remember a post came through from Switzerland, Vivo Barefoot Switzerland, and it had the X-ray of a foot in a Nike and a foot in a Vivo, but they were on two separate pages. And I thought, oh, that would look good one above the other. And I did that, and that's it went viral. Yeah. And I think, and there was a lot of naysayers, they're different feet. It doesn't even matter. It just got people thinking, for me, I see that post and think, if people can see that and go, oh, what is this shoe doing to my foot compared to being a barefoot? Yeah. Then that's that's it. That's all I need people to think about, you know? Because then they're starting to think about their footwear. And so, something so simple can be so powerful. Whereas I might put in, and that took me like 30 seconds to do, compared to me putting in never half an hour. It might be like 10 minutes. Like, I just don't even use an official thing. I just use the Apple things. Yeah. And it might 10 minutes and I have to find some pictures to do it. And I'm really portraying this great, important educational aspect of footwear or feet. And it's just it means nothing to people. Yeah, flops. And that's fine. At least it's out there. And I often use it as a reference for clients. I send them posts, or people ask me questions. Here's a post explaining that, because it takes, I've done it in such a simple way. It's really worth it.
True. And I think that's a good point. And I've found myself getting into that mindset of say if I post a longer video explaining something, I go, oh, not as many people like those videos and not as many people watch. So, and then I get well, should I even post it? But then, it's if you've got a hankering to post something, like my foot update today, I'm sure it's a 7-minute long video. I'll probably get 2 people that watch the whole video on Instagram. But I wanted to put it out because I thought it was an important message and it was an important part of my experience. And I was kind of itching. I was like, I kind of wanted to put something out for, the week. I did take a week off socials, which was really good. Yeah. I think it's important to take breaks. But then I was itching. I need to put a post out about my foot, even knowing that not many people are going to watch it, but that's okay as long as I put it out.
It's important to you, so that's why it's relevant to do.
Which is why it ends up on the page.
And you might find that someone comes along with something similar, and you go, hey, here's my experience, and it's great to have those references just to be able to go, here, look at this, look at this. And I feel like to begin with, I hated doing that because I was sending them to a social media page, but this is really simple and important information. And if that tool's out there, just like, let's do it. And my website has been redesigned recently, and because once it goes on Instagram, they could just pull it all off and I would lose all that content. So I'm very, very slowly putting those posts into mini blogs so that when people come across my website, just because they're looking up a podiatrist, they can see what I'm on about. And I think, like having another place for that information is going to be helpful as well.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, we've started doing blogs on our website, but and we've started a YouTube and Facebook, and obviously, and we're sort of cross-pollinating. And then the next big project will be TFC Mighty Network, where we'll have a lot more control over what goes on there and what conversations can be had, and I guess, there's much less of a risk of it all being pulled. I don't know how much of a risk that is on Instagram or Facebook, maybe not much, but at least it's a decluttered sort of platform where people can just go to view the information that they want to view and not be distracted by all the ads and I guess the noise of Instagram and Facebook. So
I think about it, if my Instagram got pulled, I just had this quick vision of that happening. I would be totally fine. I would just have to physically go around to some other health professionals in the area. Like, I'm using it to build up business here for me, you know? Yeah. And so I'd go around to health professionals in the area with a very succinct way that of me being a podiatrist, I'd probably be more successful because they would see me in person and they would value my time. Yeah. I don't have time to do that, but I think, wow, there's something that I could, like, that's my main goal on Instagram, you know? And then maybe I would start doing some foot workshops, which we do anyway, you know? Yeah. That would be another way to get it out to the masses. If they're my two goals, I would just have to personally visit local practitioners and somehow get my message across to the masses through some other advertising medium. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we're coming up on time. Yeah. I want to be respectful of your time. It's about dinner time too. But I definitely want to do a follow-up podcast when we come back next time to Melbourne, which will be later in the year, because we'll have some developments on the Natural Podiatry Society and all of that. Yes. And also the natural running digital product that we're working on as well. So Mick from Melbourne Soft Tissue is running a natural running workshop tomorrow after mine, and I know you guys have been collaborating a little bit and sharing ideas, and then we're going to be building a natural running online offering, and we're going to have a meeting about that tomorrow as well, actually.
Which is super exciting.
It's a very exciting project. So really I don't want to dig into it now because just for time, and also I think it probably deserves its own podcast in a sense. But let's do a follow-up because there's a lot more stuff that we could chat about. I don't know how long we just chatted for.
About an hour and 45, something like that. But Mick and I could do like a TFC runner program. Yeah, podcast. That'd be cool. Yeah,
awesome. But I really appreciate you coming on. And I already mentioned where to find you on Instagram. That's the best place to find you.
It is, yeah. All my websites are Melbourne Natural Podiatry or Mount Waverley Podiatry.
Yeah. We'll link that in the show notes.
Cool. And for those that are wondering, this is how James and I just talk to each other pretty much all the time.
Yeah. We literally just chucked a mic in front of us.
Yeah, that's right. We just like chew the fat over the big issues of foot and movement and all this other stuff. Yeah.
I loved it. So thanks again, mate. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode.
Thank you.
Cheers.